All right, everybody. Well, welcome to Talks with Titans. I'm so thankful for this incredible opportunity to enter. Actually, you should be the one conducting.
I feel like a Titan.
You are a Titan. Dave Corvoirsier is joining us today, and I am so thrilled to be able to learn about a life on screen, because you've got the voice, you've got all that experience, and we've got two students, Brody and Abby, are joining us today. These guys are both freshmen, and I know they're going to have lots of good questions for you.
No, I hope so, and I look forward to a great conversation.
Awesome. So you guys, why don't you get things rolling here with some of your thoughts or questions?
Do you mind telling us a little bit about your education?
Regular high school, graduated when I was 17, went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. That was from a small town. That was a big city to me. And I was on the 5-year plan to get my bachelor's. Then I went 2 more years into the master's program, and that's pretty much the extent of my formal education. But you know, life is an education. So,
how important would you say your education was to your overall success?
So I didn't end up in a career that spawned from my education, because I have a degree in something totally different than broadcasting or communications. But higher education prepares you in a way of discipline for learning how to write, how to communicate, how to study, how to apply yourself. And it doesn't really, I think a lot of employers look that you have a degree from college, not necessarily even what that degree is. They want to know that you have the guts and the wherewithal to stick it through for 4 years, and that says something about you. So I feel good that I did that. You could say it was a wasted degree, but I don't think so.
What would you say was like the hardest part about college, and like how did you overcome it?
So again, I came from a small town, about 5,000, and I went to Champaign-Urbana to the school there. It's a huge campus, 45 to 50,000 students, and most of the students there, the preponderance of them come from Chicago. That's a big city, and they looked at me like a hick. And some of them had even gotten out of their first year at college because they took those courses in high school. So I'm like, this is intimidating. But, I managed to get along with them pretty well. I have an easygoing manner and got along with them and started actually thriving in that environment, because I could see the potential, for growth there.
I have to jump in here because I want to know, it sounds to me like for you to make a big change to go from a degree in exercise physiology into broadcast media, how did that happen?
Right, that's a good question. So after I finished my master's degree, I kind of cut myself loose and was driving in a little pickup truck across America. I picked up jobs here and there, and I had some friends I stayed with in Houston and San Francisco, and I ended up working for a company that made some of the equipment that I used to get my degree. So it was a medical equipment company, and from there they sent me all over. I was in New York and Atlanta and Detroit, and one of the places I ended up was in Los Angeles. So in Los Angeles, I was seeing that I wasn't a great salesman, but there was a broadcasting workshop in LA. And I thought, if I don't do this, I'll always wish I would have, and I'll regret that. So I'm going to borrow some money, pay the tuition for this broadcasting workshop, and give it a go. And I really never looked back after that.
That's fascinating, by the way, because it's just so out of the blue.
Yeah.
You're in this city and this opportunity opens and you just feel compelled, I have to go do that.
I thought if I don't do this, I'll always regret it, because like I said, I've always used my voice and my appearance to get ahead. And I thought, well, this would be the ultimate. This would be the chance to use that voice and outward appearance to gain something. Of course, back then, radio and TV was really in its heyday. I mean, this is Walter Cronkite, and this is the booming news generation of TV that's gone now, really. But it was that's where you wanted to be. It was on TV. That was special. And so I thought, well, let's try that. And I started in radio and worked at a country western station in Carlsbad, New Mexico as my first broadcasting job, and next to Grand Junction, Colorado, at a top 40 station. And from there I leapt into TV And I think my starting salary in TV then was, this is 1979 or 80, was 11,500 a year. That's what I was making to start out. I was weekend anchoring in the morning.
And for that time, was that a good salary, or was that kind of on the lower side?
Oh,
or
I was
median.
I was able to pay the rent and buy some food, but not much else.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of a quick tour of the transition from exercise physiology in the world of PE and fitness into broadcasting. I really thought that I should give it a try.
Were you always a person that enjoyed having that attention? You were comfortable with that attention?
I was a cut up, like I said, in school, and I was kind of a clown. I used my voice, and I sang a lot, still do, in church and in school choirs. I was in this musical in high school, and I knew I had that gift, and I thought, well, let's see how far it can take me.
What was your favorite part about like being a newscaster and stuff?
Oh my gosh, how long do you have? There's goods and bads about it. It does give you a lot of attention, and when you get recognized by a total stranger in the grocery store, that's very heady stuff, and it makes you feel good that you're being noticed. It can be a trap too, because it can make you a little self-indulgent. So you have to take a job like that with some humility. And I always thought it was a compliment to be recognized in the grocery store by a stranger, because that means they're watching, and that's what we want, is more viewers. So that was a good part of it. But I just enjoyed the work. I like telling stories. I like writing. I like being able to tell that story cogently on camera. It takes a certain knack to be able to do that and do it succinctly in a time frame. A minute and a half. And I got real good at it, and that felt good because I was working hard at it, and I achieved a certain level of competence at it, and it was just self-perpetuating. It felt good, and I wanted to do more of it, and so that was part of what kept spurring me on.
Getting all that like attention, being like that big of a figure. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting that I'm not listening to like a news broadcast. You just got such like a good voice for it. Sorry, but like that attention like that you get as a newscaster, like you kind of become like a local celebrity, right?
You do, and that's nice. But again, that's what my bosses wanted. They wanted more people to see you and to know you, and so part of my job was not just on camera, but also appearing in public events, emceeing or doing fundraisers for charitable organizations, or just like a July 4th celebration, or any number of public appearances they wouldn't say you've got to do it, but you really had to, almost in a way, to keep the appearance of being a good soldier for the company, which was this TV station. But local celebrity is almost worse than being a national celebrity, because you live and work in the place where you're a celebrity. So, and if you're working for a popular station that gets good ratings, then almost nowhere you can go without being recognized. And that has its own challenges, because you can't just wear a 5-day beard and cutoffs to the grocery store, and people will go, "Why, that's Dave Corvoirsier. Look, I caught him." They're taking pictures or whatever. So, you always have to be on. You can't really relax into the public life, because you're being recognized. So the only place I could really be me was at home or with close friends.
So do you think has that had an effect on like your relationships with people?
Well, there are people that I know through my, certainly it opens doors. I felt like at my peak, I could call anybody in Nevada, including the governor or senators or congressmen, and I would get through. Not saying they would stay long on the phone with me, but they would, "Oh, yeah, sure, put Dave through." I knew I could do that. So I'm not sure that answers your question. What was it again you wanted to know?
I was like asking if it like affects your relationship with people, because I know like.
So yeah, there are those people that I made friends with or made acquaintances with through my job, and then there are those that are a little more personal that I made through church or through just other people I made acquaintances that are more personal friends. But it kind of colors everything you do, because you're this guy on TV, and for a good part of my career, that was a special place to be. People put an onus on that was different. You were different than somebody else. You know, you were on TV.
I sort of have like two questions in one. So like, how did you handle the pressure? Like, was there someone or something that helped you get through it?
My wife, yeah, she would kick me in the pants and say, you're letting it get to your ego, and it's a real trap that you can fall into, and you can start thinking you're a little too special. And so my wife and my friends helped me with that, and my faith, I think, too. I'm a strong Christian, and I actually like to say I'm a follower of Jesus, and with that comes the reality that He's in control and you're not.
On that attention side of things, I'm kind of curious. How did your family? Did that affect them at all? That you were a person of acclaim?
Well, a couple of stories. I was always on TV when my daughters were born. I have 3 daughters, and my oldest was in first grade one day, and the teacher went around the room and said, "Well, I'd like for each of you to tell us what your parents do." And they got to my daughter Grace, and she goes, "Well, my dad doesn't do anything." and the teacher goes, "Well, Grace, that's not true. Your dad's on TV." "Well, yeah, but he doesn't do anything." I mean, so that was I didn't get any respect at home at all. But I mean, for them, me being on TV was just like, it was normal. It was just absolutely normal to them. And they expected their dad to be on TV because that's what I did. So, but I think when they were encountered by their friends at school, they realized that was a little something special, that other kids didn't have their dads do. Not that their dads had bad or improper, not productive jobs. It just wasn't as high profile.
I also remember you said something about like having to turn up to events all the time. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if that kind of began, like, it sounds like your life kind of began to blur the lines between your job and your everyday life.
So, I don't know how to answer that, but to tell you a story. Early on in my career, here at KFVS 12, a news director gave me a job, a specific job to do in TV, as a reporter, to do what was then termed Wednesday's Child reports. It was once a week profile of a child that was in foster care that was hoping to be adopted. And I did it for 32 years. I did every week. In a lifetime of TV, probably 1,800 kids or more I featured one by one, profiling them on TV, which raised their awareness to where people would see them and go, "Oh my gosh, that kid's adoptable. Mom, Dad, you want to, And so it really became the blurring of my personal and professional was good and natural because of that direction I took. So a lot of what I became involved in extracurricular, in other words, not on the air activities, involved disadvantaged children. So I would, show up at events where they needed an MC for court-appointed special advocates or for adoption fairs or, whatever. And I was happy to do that because that was the identity I had chosen in the community, was to be involved in disadvantaged children causes. So everything from Big Brothers and Big Sisters to Boys and Girls Clubs to adoption organizations, which involve the state and the county. So that just grew. It just flowered out to include so many things. And I think my wife was a little more willing to let me go to those events because she saw it was kind of a mission field for me. Yeah.
On the idea of being a follower of Jesus, when did that happen for you, or has it always been the case?
Always been the case. My parents dragged me off to Lutheran church every Sunday. My 2 sisters and I hopped in the car and we'd drive, 13 miles to the nearest Lutheran church. And so I can't honestly say I've had the aha moment that a lot of people feel when they're born again. I've just always been a follower of Jesus, and sometimes a little less enthusiastic than others. I had my years of questioning and wandering, from the path. But I always came back to it.
So with being on the news and TV and stuff, are you able to share your faith, or is it not as
Got to be a little careful with that. There are subtle ways you can, and it actually it comes in the writing of stories. and you can slip in terms that are maybe a little more faith-based than others. It's on a day-to-day basis, and so I was allowed to be the final pair of eyes that would see the copy before it gets read, and I could insinuate words that I thought were appropriate rather than what was being written by a producer or someone much younger than me that I thought maybe didn't understand the story as well. And so that's really where it comes in is, and then being open about it in the newsroom, and surprised to find that there were lots of people in the newsroom who were also followers of Jesus who were reluctant to say anything, but for someone like me to step forward and be willing to be open about that, then they felt more emboldened to do it too.
It's a powerful idea that when you are willing to courageously share something, it can make a platform for others.
Getting a little bit emotional, but I had a co-anchor that I really enjoyed working with, and she had a really bad car accident and died. And one day I came to work, and the news director said, "We got to gather in the conference room. I need to tell you that Polly has passed away." And a small group of us got together right away, and I said, "Let's go pray." And I don't know if anybody else cared or didn't like that, but I didn't feel that or hear that from anybody else. And I think people were happy to know that someone was willing to lead them in that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And along the line that you're expressing now, and I know it takes courage even to share a deep emotion, but the life challenges that you faced, how would these young people here, they've already been through, I mean, I know these guys have already faced a number of challenges, but what advice do you have for these young guys here as a torch that you're passing to get through the tough times?
Well, if you're faith-based, if you have a great relationship with Jesus, then you're covered. And as long as you put your faith there, you know that even the hard times, he's there to help you through it. Not that he's going to relieve that pain or that hardship, but that he is there to comfort you as you do go through it. And there will be suffering. There's just no way around it. As humans and mortals, we suffer. We have things that come up that we just can't imagine in some cases. And there has to be a spiritual component of your life, or else you just won't make it through. It'll take you down. So that's what you have to do, is you have to look to your faith in God and Jesus, and there's comfort there.
You did mention kind of going through like that suffering, and I'm just curious, what's like what has been the largest like obstacle or rough patch in your life?
Honestly, a few have matched what I'm going through right now. Retirement has this onus on it. I mean, I worked straight up until I was 70, and I'm very productive. I love work, and I like to be occupied. I like to be relevant. And in 2022, I ceased that life, and I'm now transitioning. It's been, a year and a half, to a different life. What that is, I'm making up as I go. But it's challenging because I don't have the adoration of fans. I don't have the work to do. I don't have a place to go every day and apply my skills. I am struggling with relevance. So right now is a time of struggling. There were other times when I was making transitions between jobs within broadcasting that I mightily struggled with the decision. I'd make long lists and assign a certain value to each item on the list, and when I add it all up, and I talk to friends and trusted ex-employees and employers and try to come up with a solution. And those are some hard times too, is trying to discern where I should go next in life, and what was the appropriate thing to do. And of course my wife was always there and helping me with that, and I had considerations of my children as well, because taking kids out of school in the middle of their career is not good. And so there's I think that's not unlike a lot of people who struggle with decisions about the future and what's the right decision to make. And so I guess my suggestion would be to take some calculated risks. That's what I did when I went into broadcasting. I took a calculated risk. I thought, if I don't do this, I'll forever wish I would have had done that. And so to be disciplined and to take a calculated risk. Now, discipline doesn't mean rules that you necessarily have to follow. It actually, you find freedom in discipline. You find freedom in routines and making your life follow a certain creed. And that's something I've had to really figure out along the way. But discipline actually frees you.
So you've had 70 years of adventurous, extraordinary experiences. And looking back over it all, is there anything you'd do differently? Or is there something you'd tell these young people, learn this quick? And one thing I just heard you say is find the creed that you can develop the discipline to adhere to. But
well, I figured this question would come up, and the way I've always answered it is I think you need to be agile about life. You need to react and be willing to change. You have to be adaptable. You have to go with the flow, because if you're rigid, you're going to go down. You have to adapt to the challenges ahead, and you don't know what they're going to be, so you've got to kind of float. You have to reserve a little bit of your life as a float so that you aren't taken totally by surprise when something really strange comes up.
Sounds like Bruce Lee. Be water. That's what it reminds me of that.
Be like the air.
Hey, yeah, go back to your achievements and some of the highlights of such a awesome career. Like, what are some things that you think, I'm so glad I got to have that experience?
Well, I'm not sure your target audience and how young they are. Do you know?
It's a very wide range.
Because I may drop some names that some people may not remember, but I've covered 2 papal visits, one in the West and one here in St. Louis. I've interviewed 2 presidents and 1 vice president. I've covered the launch of a space shuttle. I've covered the landing of a space shuttle. I've interviewed sports and entertainment personalities. I've taken phone calls from when I would volunteer to do telethons in Vegas, which was a high-profile city. I would often get phone calls from movie stars and TV stars that would call and say, "I'd like to, Dave. I'm watching you on TV. I'd like to donate, to your cause." That kind of stuff. Just who else gets that kind of a call? Politicians. I've been to 3 national political conventions, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Chicago. It just goes on and on and on. I'm not trying to be self-centered about it, but the job led me to some pretty amazing places and people.
That's amazing. That's extraordinary. And awards. What awards have you received?
Well, I've gotten 5 Emmys. You have to pay for your Emmy. You have to pay for the application to get an Emmy, and you have to pay ahead of time, hoping that you'll get a statue. And I didn't always pay for the statue ahead of time, so I've got 5 Emmys, but only 3 statues, which is fine. I can give 1 to each of my daughters. I've had other awards that are mostly community based. And I was just telling you guys before the interview here that I've just found out the other day that I'm being awarded a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Nevada Broadcasters Association, which who knew?
That's great.
There was even, I was already in the Nevada Broadcasters Hall of Fame, so I'm thinking, well, what else can there be? But, I have to take that with a grain of salt because I know they're trying to raise, this association raises money for scholarships for kids to attend broadcasting school, and they need a name that they can rally around for this gala. And in this case, I'm that, and that's fine. And I probably have earned it. Next year will be 40 years since I started broadcasting in Las Vegas, so yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes. Now, I haven't even mentioned one of the other things that about, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I kind of saw the writing on the wall as I got older and older and realized that I wasn't going to be in TV forever, that I should have something to transition to when I got into retirement. So I took up voice acting. And I thought, well, I do that every day. I use my voice every day. How hard can it be to be a voice actor? Again, this is where you got to be agile. I got a total education that broadcasters are actually not welcome in the community of voice actors because, as you've said, Brody, I have kind of a patterned voice delivery. It sounds like a newscaster, and I've had to actually get coaching to learn to drop that. Because in voiceover land, it's conversational. That's what they want. They want conversational. Well, what's conversational? Well, you don't know till you hear it. And the client will try to give you direction for jobs, but they don't really know it till they hear it either. So you just have to kind of throw out your voice on auditions and hope that you're giving them the conversational that they want. And I get a lot of auditions for newscaster, man on the street, sportscaster, interviewer. Those are very much in my bailiwick, and so I should land those jobs all the time, and I do in the voiceover world. So it's been kind of fun. That's one thing I have found in retirement that's kept my my energy up.
What's one of your favorite voice acting jobs that you've had?
I was the voice. A lot of them have to do with being the voice of it's like a parody newscaster, and I was on a FTD commercial on Valentine's Day for they needed a kind of a satirical look at a TV newscaster, but you had to have that delivery still. You need some flowers? Well, here you go, mister, kind of a thing. And so. Those are fun, but I've also narrated like 50 or so audiobooks, which is a real labor of love. I kind of got out of that because it is a lot of work, a lot of fun, but a lot of work, and it doesn't pay particularly well for the time you put in on it. So I kind of quit doing that, but it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of genres within voice acting where you get to play different characters. Especially in video games or in anime, those genres generally you get to play something, and that's always fun. So, I hope that answers your question.
Are there any big names that you've gotten the opportunity to voice act for?
The way voice acting works today, everything's done digitally. I receive requests to audition for jobs by email from either agents or online casting sites, and then they will give direction, and sometimes they'll offer, this is who we want you to sound like, and it could be Morgan Freeman, it could be any number of popular names and voices, sometimes George Clooney. I mean, there's some, Morgan Freeman comes up a lot, and I'm thinking, well, if you want me to sound like Morgan Freeman, then just go hire Morgan Freeman. Why? Well, Morgan Freeman is expensive, so we'd like you to sound like Morgan Freeman without being Morgan Freeman. So those are the kind of jobs that are a challenge, and often they'll send you a YouTube video and say, this is the voice. We don't want you to do this voice, but we want you to sound like it in intent or in attitude. And so you have to kind of read between the lines. Some of the directions are even longer than the copy. I mean, sometimes you'll get a direction that's a couple of paragraphs, and you're thinking, this guy really doesn't know what he wants. But I'm going to try something anyway. I'll do what I can do, and if he likes it, again, they don't really know what they want, but when they hear it, they know. And so that's what I try to do.
So how would you, as a successful person, define success?
Yeah, I'm careful with that term, because if you've achieved success, then I think you kind of die, or you suffer a long tail-ending career. Success can be termed in money, in achievements, in Emmys, any number of things that build your reputation or your ego. But success, I'm careful with, because if I say, well, I'm successful, well, then what else am I going to achieve? And the most successful people quickly become addicts, or will go out and buy the most expensive car they can, because they never stop wanting. And a success is just this current that runs through your life, and it never stops flowing. You just have to rise to it and then take it where it takes you. There's not like any epitome, or else we'd all be U.S. presidents. I mean, who's the most powerful person on the planet? I mean, we all can't be that. So you have to find success in your own way. You have to decide what you're satisfied with, and what will pass as success for you.
I know. I love that. That's the first time I've heard it explained that way. Mm. The idea that it's a current that runs through your life, mm-hmm. and that if it's something that you define as a point in time, then maybe it's downward from there or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've had things that I've aspired to. At one time, I thought I was destined to be a network news anchor, and those jobs are hard to come by too. I certainly would have liked to have won some Emmys, and I did. So those are all successes, but it doesn't define me. I mean, I can't let that define me. People say, well, have you won any awards like you did? And I'm happy to list them off, but I don't think that it makes me successful. It just means I've reached certain marks of achievement.
Well, even that explanation helps me think about it differently, because you're going through this new situation that you're trying to transition from career life into a new season, for instance. Yep. And you could success can be what does success look like in this transition? I mean, there are just so many ways that you can.
How adaptable are you? Maybe that's a measure of success.
Yeah, and I heard you say that one of the keys to the good life is being agile.
Yeah, yeah.
That's really good.
I think that's really important.
If you were to go back and start everything over, was there anything you would do differently?
It makes you tired just thinking about it.
Yeah. Golly, it probably requires more thought than I'm going to give it, but my answer would be that I would give a little more time to my family than my career. I would be a little more compassionate about some of my dealings with people, and I would probably have spoken out more energetically about my faith than I did.
That's fantastic. You hit that summary, didn't you? Speaking of family, how long have you and your wife been married? Like, how did that happen?
We met at the TV station here in Cape Girardeau, and she was dating somebody else, but I stole her away. And,
way to go.
A year later,
as
we got
you would,
married.
Emmy Award winner.
Well, she may regret that now. I don't know, but that was 40 and a half years ago, and yeah, it's staying together that long is a challenge. There's things that come up, and we've become different people over that time. So you have to again be agile and adjust and adapt to those changes. And we have three beautiful daughters, 35, 33, and 30, and we're all very tight. And I think one of my biggest successes as a father is that my three daughters love each other so much, and they call each other all the time, and they support each other. And that's as good as a parent could hope for.
Wow. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
That's solid.
Yeah. That struck a chord with you, Abby. You have sisters and brothers?
Well, I actually have 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister.
Well, I grew up on the farm in Illinois, and my parents, of course, have passed, and I inherited that farm with my 2 sisters. And we've shared the ownership of that land, and we recently have sold off some of it, and the title company and the realtors were just amazed that the 3 of us got along so well. And they told us, look, you don't understand. We've seen people come to battles over this kind of stuff between siblings. And I think my mom would just turn over in her grave if she knew that we were fighting over something like that. We've had disagreements about what to do with the land, but we've always agreed, in the end, we love each other, and we've agreed on it. So it's kind of important to maintain those sibling relationships. You may not think so, and there will be flare-ups, of course, and anger, but it's important to maintain that. Those people share your memories like nobody else in your life. And when your parents are gone, those siblings will have that. They'll be holding that in with you, that memory of what the family was like. So, kind of important.
A shared heritage
Yeah.
is a big foundational part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wanted to ask because there's my oldest just became engaged yesterday.
You're gonna let that happen. You're just gonna go ahead and let them do that.
You know, as much as I try to control things, sometimes you recognize that when your children grow up and surpass you in their skills and their way of doing things, it's super exciting. But in 40 years of marriage, what would you say are a couple of key elements that you would advise my son, who's probably listening, and also these two freshmen here that are going to have future good relationships?
Well, for long-term relationships like that, I mean, you have to seriously take your vows, and you have to agree that there's not an out. You know, you can't just say, well, I don't like that, I'm going to divorce. I mean, you're in it. You're in it for the long run. And if you're in it for the long run and you have that commitment, then you will find compromise. And it comes difficult. It can be a difficult walk to find that compromise, and it can be hurtful and painful, and it can challenge you. And the best of, I mean, because you know your wife, and your wife knows her husband as good or better than anybody on this planet, and so they know how to get to you as well as how to please you, and you have to take all that into consideration and be adaptable and be agile and be willing to compromise, or it's just going to be hell. It really can't be.
Yeah. So compromise is a big one.
It's huge. No.
And being thoughtful and considerate that you do have a lot of influence because you know that person so well.
And you learn to do the little things. I mean, I'm big on love languages. I know it's not necessarily a very Christian concept, but if you ever read the book about love languages,
there's five of them.
And
might even be a couple that weren't.
You have to know what your spouse's love language is, and try to hit that as much as you can, because that's what's going to make them purr.
Good.
Yeah.
I still have another question because I'm learning so much. I love these opportunities to dig into the deeper things. Career, journalism. Has it changed since you entered journalism to where it is now? And if so, what are a couple positive changes that you think? And what are some that you think are kind of hurting the career field?
Oh my gosh. Again, how much time do you have?
15 minutes.
There we go.
So journalism as a whole has undergone a change for the worse, I think. Broadcasting especially, because it's the most high profile of those careers in journalism. The written word is not appreciated as much. Newspapers are going out of business right and left. There's a few big ones remaining, and they're mostly liberal. And I say that because surveys have proven that journalists fall on a divide of like 90 to 10%, 90% being liberal and 10% being conservative. They've stated that openly, and these are surveys that have been not unbiased, and so we have a very powerful fifth column of media in this country that basically is supporting one point of view, and 10% doesn't get much airtime. And so I saw it, especially in my last 2 years of being on the air. It was really starting to be burdensome, especially from corporate edicts. As you know, usually there's a kind of a invisible line between management and journalism, where management understands that journalists have to do what they have to do, and we can't really control them. But more and more management was becoming controlling of what the product was on air. And there were certain things that just, we had to say this and we had to say that. And again, it came down to the level of what words do you use to describe something. And I would prefer not to use that word as a conservative, but as a liberal would probably, use that word and something even more. And so I fought those battles every day in just the words that I would use to speak the news. And in general, I think there's a degradation of a trust in the news process across the board in America. Even liberals don't really trust that what they're being given is an unadorned point of view. So, I mean, there's some pretty even-tempered things that you can't put an edge on, like, if you're covering a car crash or bad weather or a court case, it's pretty cut and dried. But what it also comes down to, besides words, is how much time is given to any one point of view. So if you've got two people running for president, it's been pretty well documented that the Democratic point of view or the Democratic candidate gets much more airtime than the conservative candidate. And these are the biases that start forming in journalism today. And it's in the written journalism, but again, that's kind of falling by the wayside. I mean, who reads their news anymore? Well, I do, but most people can consume their news now on their phone or on a tablet, some on TV, less and less on TV, and there's no controlling entity that says, I mean, there's the First Amendment, but even it's being attacked. So I'm kind of rambling here, but I see a real troublesome trend in the opportunity to consume unbiased, straight news that has no agenda behind it.
Well, that's a big revelation for us, for those of us who aren't on the inside perspective.
Yeah.
I don't think we had any idea that there is proven statistically that level of coverage bias in the media.
Oh my gosh,
but
yeah.
it's also interesting that instead of, you didn't look at the equipment usage and the role of the journalist, you were looking more at the ideas conveyed to the population and who controls it.
Yeah, I actually got taken off the air before a newscast because I got into such an argument with my news director about the way we portrayed the January 6th event. I'll just call it an event. They very much wanted to call it an insurrection, and I said it wasn't an insurrection. You could call it a riot, but I don't buy into the fact that it's an insurrection. And based on that difference of opinion, I was taken off the air for that newscast.
What?
Yeah, we spent a couple of hours in his office talking about it.
What? So
Yeah.
that's what it boils down to,
Yeah.
is a word choice that
that's
conveys.
what I've been saying all along is that's where it insinuates itself into the culture, is the battle over words. What's PC and what's not. Pronouns. Choice of words for certain things and not others. I should give you more examples right off the top of my head, but that's what comes to mind. I used to say the word homosexual instead of queer or gay, and I got called on that too. They were like, "Why are you saying homosexual? That's old." I go, "Well, it's accurate. It's fair. It's true. Well, we just don't use those words anymore." And nobody says heroine anymore. Everybody's a hero. It's just there's some gender built into the language that's traditional that is not approved today.
What? Wow. I brought a group of Prodigy High School students a few years ago to a Missouri open session in the House, capital city, Jefferson City.
Oh,
and
great.
it was the first session.
Oh.
And in that particular event, there was a representative, Democratic representative, who stood up and gave the proposal that we remove any gender-affiliated language from our court session or from our House sessions. In order to respect all people of all backgrounds, let's stop using terms like gentleman and lady. And he said, for instance, my sibling recently had a child, and in order to respect the fact that that child could grow up to be whatever that child wants to be, I choose to call that child my nibbling. And he literally said this, and the Prodigy High School students were up here in the upper balcony just watching, and all of us were just going, "What is happening right now?"
Yeah, well, even down to birth certificates, they're not allowed to assign, in some states, some localities, they're not allowed to assign the male or female gender to a child that's just been born. Yeah, oh yeah.
On a birth certificate.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there's a sense that these divides happen between rural and urban, and to a large part that's true. It could be conservative or liberal. I think it's rural and urban, but even beyond that, I think it's even showing up as a whole new divide between those who have common sense and those who don't. I mean, it's hard to define common sense, and as an on-air reporter, we were often encouraged to remind our viewers that, for instance, if you're driving in wintry weather, just use common sense. And that was kind of a throwaway term. But I'm like, there's a lot of people that just don't have it. Mm-hmm. And I'm being biased. I'm a conservative. I think common sense falls in more traditional areas. But some people just don't have common sense. And some of the stuff I see happening in this world seems to be so fringe as to be almost laughable. But that's my opinion.
Do you think like the rise in social media and stuff has an effect on?
I do, and I think social media has had a profound effect on the way people relate, on the way information is disseminated, and it's unbridled. And now Europe has a better handle on holding social media platforms under some rules than America does. And I think it's good because First Amendment rights are being trampled on, and honestly, the mighty dollar, and I'm a capitalist, but the mighty dollar tends to rule, especially, for instance, your Facebook account is free, but the information they gather from your profile is sold to advertisers so they can better profile you for targeted sales and ads. Now, that's not right. I mean, I see a day when your personal information is handled by a broker. There will be information or profile brokers who would say, you want this person's profile? You want the demographic for this guy? It's going to cost you. But the cat's out of the bag for us, even for these young people, because it's already been taken from us without any rules, really. And that's what social media has done. They've stayed ahead of the lawmakers so that stuff gets done, the damage gets done before the laws come into effect, I think.
It'd be interesting to hear your all's point of view on that at some point, the whole notion of how social media influences the way you interact with people, the way you build relationships, and also even what people your age are aware is being captured from your social media to monetize your preferences, for instance. That's crazy stuff.
Yeah, and there's that school of thought that says, well, social media allows everybody to interact. It's a worldwide community, and it's true, but it's also allowed for a lot of naysayers and hate messages to be promoted, and it's prompted people to be more tribal, not less tribal. So you tend to gather with the people you agree with, and you unfollow those people you don't agree with on social media, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and so you isolate yourself from other points of view. So now you've got students at Berkeley University who are crying that they're being attacked, that they're being assaulted by other people's language. What? Assault means physical violence in my lexicon. So a person who is hurt by someone else's words, well, I'm sorry, but that's going to happen in life. You're going to hear an opposing point of view at some point. Social media kind of takes that away by allowing you to be in your own tribe.
Yeah, and that becomes your only comfort zone.
Yeah, and it's false.
It is false. We probably are down to our last few minutes. So do you guys have any further questions for our special guest today?
So as also Jesus followers, I like that. As like Jesus followers, do you think it's important to like protect ourselves from like certain, I'll say secular things like on social media?
I think it's important to have a balance. People ask me, where do you get the news then? And I say, well, I read and watch 10 different sources and the truth is in the middle somewhere. I mean, you can't shut your exposure down to other points of view or even hate speech at some point. You should just take it all with a grain of salt. I mean, you've got to find the truth is always in the middle somewhere. You hear both points of view and you go, well, yeah, but here's the compromise. And that's probably really where the value lies and the verification of any particular point of view is in the middle. That would be my suggestion. You guys have asked great questions, by the way.
I think that's something that's becoming more and more lost these days.
Yeah.
Kind of as you mentioned with social media, we're all gathering in our own little tribes, so we're only seeing that one perspective.
Yeah, and we do it to ourselves. We go, well, I don't like that guy. I'm just going to unfollow him. And then he's not showing up in your feed. He's not showing up in your, as you peruse, scroll around, you don't see that, and so you tend to find that the world's only this, and really it's that and this, and that's this.
And the media, the advertisement media that tailors the messages to fit our preferences.
Yeah.
That also creates, it's almost like we're in our own little bubble. And then when somebody comes along with an opposing viewpoint, we don't even know how to respond to it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I have one final point, because you described that you took voice coaching from somebody at some point, but you also authored a book about developing your voice.
Well, the book was an outgrowth of a blog that I wrote for over a decade. I mean, I wrote every day, sometimes 4 or 5 days a week, on the topic of voice acting, and I just would find things to write about, and it was a voyage of discovery in this new area of voice acting, and so I got pretty good at writing articles that were being followed, and I had a subscriber base that was interested, and so I took my best articles and I compiled those into a book, which I made, and then which is on Amazon, and it was published. You can buy a paperback copy of it, and then I published a second edition of that book online virtually. So that's not available in print, but you can download it. That was a whole nother endeavor, because I found out that I was a good writer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, it's part of communication, I suppose, and you're a skillful communicator.
They each have their challenges, yeah.
Well, since I'm trying to do these little podcasts here, and I feel very uncomfortable about the sound of my own voice, and a teacher, you want to use your voice in a way that people are drawn to, that people want to listen to. What's your best advice for somebody to get that solid voice going in that direction?
Pauses.
Pauses.
Do you remember? I can't think of his name right now. He was the guy that did, and now you know the rest of the story. Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey was called the Prince of the Pregnant Pause because in his newscast, which was written by his wife, by the way, this is decades long. This guy was a popular radio personality. I mean, he was listened to by millions, and he was called the Prince of the Pregnant Pause because he would stop in the middle of a line, and it felt interminable, because in broadcasting, dead space is a no-no. So a pause was like, what's he bought? Well, the next thing he said, you really listened to. You really heard it. And it better be good. And he always delivered. But pausing because that shows that you've thought about what you're going to say, and you've thought about how you're going to say it. And pauses, I think, are overlooked. I think they're important. You know what I'm saying?
I was watching. Did you see this?
No, I that's one of my things. But I'm not big on repetition of words. I try to not use the same word over and over and over in the same sentence, or two sentences or three sentences together. Like. You guys
hear that much?
And I've gotten over a lot of that because I've had to, and I've had to totally strike curse words from my vocabulary. There can't be even a chance that I might, in a moment of indiscretion, say a word that should not be said on air. So I just don't. I don't in any part of my life swear. And
well, we've covered a broad range today.
Yeah.
And it's been very informative.
Thanks.
And I agree with what Dave Corvoirsier said for you guys, that you ask great questions. Mm-hmm. We're very glad to have you guys join us today.
Yeah, it's a great perspective.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.